Thanks for joining us, Ed Crane, on thelibertyplaybook.com. We're talking about your money in a sense. If you are strangled by debt, you really don't have a lot of liberty. And that, in essence, is the story of what's going on in the country right now. The federal government is now close to a $20 trillion debt. That breaks down to about $130,000 per every American. Imagine having to pay that bill. Well, joining us to talk about how we got to this point and how we might get out of it in two segments today, Lou Uhler, founder of the National Tax Limitation Committee, and his son Kirk, who is a county legislator in Placer County, California. Now, Lou is also, we're going to get into it in our second segment, driving towards a balanced budget amendment in an Article 5 constitutional situation. We could have a convention of the states, but we'll save that for our second installment. Now, Lou, how do we get to this point? I think it was Grover Cleveland. He sent back like 150 billion or something crazy like that. We haven't had a surplus in how many years?
No, the balanced budget was last in the time of Newt Gingrich and actually Bill Clinton in the latter part of the 90s. We haven't been there since. You're absolutely right. We're at about $20 trillion of debt. That's 100% of the annual income of the entire nation. And when you reach that, you're at a critical level. Remember, recently, Greece had real problems. They were at about 120%. So what we have to do now is restore congressional order, regular order to the budget. We have to pass budgets and appropriations individually, not with these huge omnibus bills, and that will help us get there. But finally, what we've got to do is impose on Washington the responsibility to balance the budget and limit the spending growth, and that is the amendment we have in mind for this process of Article 5, where the states at 34 state resolutions, Congress must call a convention, and at the convention we will shape and pass an amendment to the Constitution to limit fiscal excesses and then send it to the states for ratification.
That is kind of a complex issue. We're going to break that down, hopefully a little simpler for you in our second segment. Let's put this money situation in perspective. 1933, the worst year of the Great Depression, 25% unemployment. At that point, it was only 39% of gross domestic product. Now we're supposedly have 5% unemployment, and we're at 100 or a little bit more than that. Scary, Kirk.
Well, it is. And when you consider the fact that the vast majority of our federal spending is essentially just on autopilot, absolutely no congressional oversight, the entitlements taking up roughly 2/3 of the overall federal budget, and Congress intentionally structured those budgets such that they wouldn't have to vote on them year after year. So taking them off the table and thereby not giving them annual discretion over whether or not these programs should be evaluated for their effectiveness. I mean, what has the war on poverty actually done to end poverty?
No, it's expanded it, actually.
Exactly. Well, when you create amongst more and more people an attitude that I don't have to work, I can get by just fine with color televisions and cell phones and all the rest, we don't have any incentive for people to get themselves out of any kind of a rough condition because we've made life so comfortable on the government dole.
Okay, so if the government...
And let me add that this last 8 years under Obama, where he has eliminated the work requirement for food stamps, reduced the requirements on SSI disabled, and had the worst recovery since the Great Depression because he doesn't understand how taxes adversely impact economic growth. And we are at a low level of economic growth. We need to be back at 4 or 5%, not 1%, to grow our way out of this problem.
So it's pretty simple. You have to cut the spending and you have to have more on the revenue side. But the economy's in the tank, so how do you increase revenues? And as you pointed out, Kirk, you've got all these entitlement programs and you can't really cut defense. So where do you cut? How do you do it?
Well, again, that's where it comes back to needing to establish regular order. You've got to get to the point where every dollar that is being spent on an annual basis is as a result of a current authorization. Right now, we're somewhere north of $300 billion a year that we spend that is appropriated and spent every year without a current authorization.
Well, it sounds like an insurmountable mission, but it really may not be. We're going to talk about that in our next segment with Lou and Kirk Uhler. I'm Ed Crane.